Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This evening, we bring together some of the best experts and examples from around the world to tell us how AI can transform and reinvent a business. And I urge you all to participate in the conversation tonight using social media. Share your thoughts and ideas with us using the hashtag Cognitive Enterprise. To set the context by defining cognitive enterprise and how platform-centric business models are gaining traction, I'd like to invite on stage Managing Director of IBM India and South Asia, Karan Bajwa.
All right, very good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Building Cognitive Enterprises Forum by IBM and CNBC. Now, one of the reasons we've come to you, pretty close sequence from the March events that we did with the Think Forum, is that the learnings that we are getting from enterprises adopting these new wave of technologies is coming way faster than we thought. So we thought it's a good time to come back, share some of the early learnings, and actually help you scale as you all go through this adoption journey. Just reflect back and think about the two horizontal waves that have touched our industry in all ways possible. I look at two waves. The first wave of digital computing, where the computing power came into the hands of the individual and it transformed individuals and organizations. Cross-sector, enterprises, consumers. Look at the country itself. We were able to create a $200 billion industry just from that digital computing wave. It touched every enterprise there is. We are now at the cusp of the second big wave of adoption, and it is not just one technology. It's simply, if I could sum it all, it's really the power of all of the technologies enabled by the power of data. That's the revolution that we are at the cusp of today. And these technologies really enable us to transform the way we think. The era of cognitive enterprise, which is an ever-evolving, ever-learning enterprise, that has arrived. And I'll share with you why it is possible today with a few examples as well. When fashion retail major Aditya Birla considered transforming their IT infrastructure and scale up, they thought cognitive, and you will hear more about that. Future Group, they capitalized their data center to create an end-to-end solution for their retail stores to cut energy consumption by over 10% and reduce carbon emissions. There are many such examples of enterprises that have transformed from the early use of these technologies to now scale usage. The biggest challenge, in my view, for all these transformation trajectories is to define your strategic differentiation. In most cases, we started with an outside-in approach, which was driven by possibly a customer demand or possibly a disruption coming from a competition. But that is the past phase. It'll go on for some industries, but I believe it is giving way to the potential of an inside-out era of digital revolution. And it's all about leveraging the data that you have. We've shared this in the past, that all of the magic that's been created in this world of internet, so-called internet, is been with about 20% of data that is in the public domain. The rich data, 80%, which is business relevant, sits in your enterprises, and that's what I call the inside-out transformation, and I'll share that a little bit more with you on that. So what really goes about in the making of a cognitive enterprise? There are a few key attributes as we have learned about. No running away from the fact that you've got to have an agile culture of innovation. Scale application of technologies like AI, blockchain, IoT, scale adoption. Let me assure you, technology is not the problem. There are scale examples available from global. If it's blockchain, we got the largest blockchain ecosystem. If it's IoT, we got scale examples of IoT. Technology is not the adoption. Our appetite in adopting them on scale is the big question that we got to answer. And of course, it's got to be enabled by an ecosystem of business platforms. And I'll touch on this business platforms concept a little bit more. Let's talk about it. In the recent past, we witnessed some of the leading companies placing bets on the creation of business platforms to solidify competitive advantage and differentiation. I'll give you two examples. These business platforms differentiate an organization by combining data, unique workflows, and an expertise to drive the competitive advantage. They're replicable with a number of processes like examples, risk management for a bank, claims for an insurance company, merchandising for a retailer, and supply chain for a consumer goods company. And think about your individual industries, and the potential is unimaginable about what you can do with your customers in ways way more than what you traditionally connect them with. So before I close, I just like to re-emphasize on the value and importance of these platforms to your enterprise. Number one, they will be the fulcrum of your organizational strategy. If you are in the growth mode, which I assume all of you are in, they will act as a North Star for change programs and investment priorities to help navigate from the legacy to the future. They'll be the basis of and critical connecting tissue with other ecosystems as well that goes way beyond your traditional stakeholders. And finally, they will continuously learn and get smarter through the technologies we said, AI, ML, DL. These technologies will enable you to get way more smarter. These journeys are very special for us. We are learning through these journeys, building the early use cases, and that's what we endeavor to bring down to you today. So thank you very much once again, and we look forward to having a very interactive conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bajwa. Ladies and gentlemen, in our first session this evening, we discussed what business platforms are and how they are helping organizations deploy new capabilities to create value for themselves and their customers. I'd like to invite Shireen Bhan to moderate the panel. I'd also like to invite back on stage Karan Bajwa to join Shireen. I request TV Narendran, MD and CEO of Tata Steel, and Vibha Padalkar, MD and CEO of HDFC Life, to join Shireen and Karan.
Well, once again, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And I think Karan has set the context for what we intend to discuss, not just on this panel, but through the course of this evening. And I think the three panelists here that we have this evening are going to help us understand what they're doing individually at each of their enterprises to ensure that they're constantly updated, relevant, and in process are actually creating wealth as well as value. TV Narendran, let me start by asking you, give me a sense of this inside-out approach that Karan was talking about and how you're taking that forward.
Tata Steel has survived for 100 years. Obviously, it's lived and learned and made changes. But I think today technology allows you to capture a lot more information than you could in the past. So your ability to do that, decipher the insights from that, and that's true of organizations, that's true of individuals. So I think in enterprises, we basically hardwire to collect more information in a manufacturing enterprise like ourselves through sensorization and things like that. Because if you've achieved all that we have by capturing a fraction of the information we can capture and processing a fraction of what we capture, then there's so much more we can do by capturing far more information and analyzing it far better. So I think that's the opportunity that there is. The ability of organizations to do that well will differentiate them from the rest.
For a manufacturing industry like yours, is it really the new technologies that are the fulcrum or the facilitator?
No, I think it's new technologies from the ability to process information, new technologies from the ability to capture information.
Okay.
Because process industry like ours generates a huge amount of information. Oftentimes it's not even captured. And that allows you to institutionalize insights. A lot of decisions, good decisions may have been taken driven by intuition.
Okay.
That's where experience comes in. Now, when you have an ability to capture a lot of information, have an ability to run analytics on it, write algorithms on it, then you're able to institutionalize intuition in some sense and institutionalize the learnings.
That's a good point that you make. But give me an example, for instance, of how this institutionalization has actually helped improve efficiency.
So there are two things that we do. One is we have a top-down approach. So once we realize the potential of it, for a company like us in India, we've said we need to target a $2 billion saving over the next 3 years through various initiatives. Now let's run with what are the projects at the ground level that need to add up to this, right? Now, if you look at in a steel melting shop, for instance, there's a lot of judgment which is exercised on the speed at which the slab is cast.
Okay.
You do it too fast, you can have a breakout. You do it too slow, you have a productivity loss, right? And the multiple parameters which are important in terms of the quality of steel that you need, the alloys that you've added, the existing temperature at the ladle, and so on and so forth. So oftentimes it's the most experienced shift operator who makes those judgment calls based on his experience, his knowledge. And there are a lot of variabilities there. Now, when you run programs, when you capture all the information, run analytics programs, you know the sweet spots, you know the ideal speed for this grade, So you can, improve speeds by 5%, 10%, and that's a huge improvement in productivity. So there are thousands of projects like these. So it's a large number of small things which add up. A lot of benefits.
So how much of the $2 billion in savings is going to be on account of being able to efficiently deploy technology?
So now the challenge is when we find some savings, the operating guy says because of us, the guys running the digital project say it's because of them. But I don't care. As long as the savings come to the company, I don't care who gets the credit. But we've got ideas worth at least $1 billion, which are under various stages of execution. So I think the opportunities are huge. There's a process of discovery as you go about it. It's important for the leadership to understand what the potential is.
But Vibha, let me get you in on the conversation as well. Give me a sense of what has been done at HDFC Life and how you're approaching this.
What we're discussing today is inevitable, and that's something that at HDFC Life we recognized perhaps 4-5 years ago in real intensity. And that's when we invested in many ways. We invested apart from creating this middleware which would allow us to mine our own data, given that now we're close to a 2-decade-old company. And more importantly, to recognize that we are going to have different customer and differing customer needs. One itself is looking at how do we have a better bang for the buck as far as sales are concerned.
Okay.
So, for example, we would look at our lead management. How do we empower our sales guy to, in a way, Uberification, for want of a better word, of giving him the leads. Along with the leads, it's on an app.
Okay.
It is within the geography that he's comfortable with, as well as we're incentivizing him based on tasks. We say, okay, do a simple one. You've just joined the company. You've just gone through basic training.
Okay.
Very good. Now go and do this. Before you do this, just read this nugget, which is also a very simple, in a very understandable manner. Insurance can be complex. Those sorts of things, so that you're setting him up to succeed. At the same time, we are also building tools, and we have built under our Insta platform. So this is really all he needs to know is to type.
Okay.
So given the complex nature of the products, he needs to know, just to type to say, is there a nomination change that is possible?
Okay.
What is the kind of underlying funds? And he has it at the power of just in his app. So for example, the extent of usage today is about 4 lakh queries a day that are being used, and the sale is closed then and there, as against previously it could have come back to head office, back office, customers lost interest, etc., and also lost in translation.
Okay. So what's been the percentage change in terms of customer acquisition? 5 years, you said that you've put this in place about 5 years ago. What's been the change in customer acquisition?
I would say as high as about 40%, because when I look at all the new age parts of the business that we just were not present.
Okay. Karan, since you brought up the issue about having an inside-out framework as opposed to an outside-in framework, give me examples of how you're actually incorporating that as part of the culture of the organization.
Sure. As I said, Shireen, at the beginning, the outside-in transformation that happened was environmental in nature. It happened because the customer demanded, because they could see it somewhere else, or your competition simply had the potential to disrupt you. So it was environmental and a more reaction mechanism to the whole transformation phase that yielded in what I call it the random acts of digital. The real power of this transformation is inside out, purely because most organizations have this valuable resource they've been accumulating over years, which is their data.
Right.
And that data gives the incumbents a massive advantage. So in fact, we shared earlier through one of the studies that we believe that the next phase of disruption on scale will be actually caused by incumbents. And we actually call it the incumbent disruptor. And the reason is the power of data. Now, while there is that power of incumbent data, there is also a pitfall in the sense that the euphoria around some of these technologies should not override the hard work that is required to realize the benefits of that. We just shared another data point that 50% of AI projects fail. And they don't fail because of AI, they fail because the hard work required to be done on the data was not done. The data sources, a single view of the customer, integrating into one data platform, that's the hard, arduous work. That's not the flashy stuff that people like to see.
Right.
But that's the hard work that organizations have to do to be able to realize the benefit.
TV Narendran, give me a sense of some of these technologies and the way that you've been able to adopt it and how that's been in sync with the transformational journey that Tata Steel has been on.
So there are two dimensions to it for us. One is we look at it from the context of cost efficiencies.
Yeah.
So that's about capturing data, processing data, using that to drive greater efficiencies. Because while we've been on this continuous improvement journey for decades, it's about scaling up that continuous improvement.
Right.
To deliver consistent performance, efficient performance, best demonstrated performance, day in and day out, across multiple locations, not depending on people who are there who will retire, so on and so forth, right? So how can you institutionalize that, scale that? The second part is, how do you drive a different stakeholder experience? So anyone who deals with Tata Steel, how can he or she have a very different experience because we leverage technology well? So we can differentiate through the efficiencies we can drive using technology. We can differentiate through the experience that we can deliver to our stakeholders.
Vibha, let me ask you about the manner in which you, for instance, have used AI, not just from a point of view of addressing your own employees, etc., but also customer acquisition, customer retention, grievance redressal, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of it, and it's both exactly like you say in the front part of our business, back office, risk management, the entire gamut. And now it's actually businesses are asking for it, and that's a good place to be, as against a top-down approach. What we call as hyper-personalization. This is to say, what is it that, how can we empower the sales guy to sell it? He does not need to know all that happens back end, but we are having AI and ML so that over a period of time, there are patterns that emerge to say that this does not work, this aspects work, these work in these geographies, these work in certain products, because it just can't be one size fits all. It just can't be you're putting more agents, feet on street, and you're selling. We do that too. But if we were to do things differently and disrupt, then this is the only way wherein we can use all the data that we have in a manner that we can put it to use. Again, through AI, for us to know that a very good sense that this is going to result in a fraud. This is going to result in the policy not being persistent. Very important for us because we are in the business to pay claims. Very simple. Either you can shut the gate at the beginning or you can shut the gate at the end, and we would like to shut the gate on frauds at the beginning. And this allows us to do that with amazing amount of accuracy, because when we hindsight it, we know that largely where we have said no to business, we have taken the right decision. Okay. So it's really all pervasive.
Important. So before you get to an NPA-like situation, you address it even before that. But Karan, on Vibha's point about hyper-personalization, I just wanted to ask you to explain to us. I mean, for somebody like you at IBM, I would imagine that is going to be the attempt as you work with different clients. What are the different experiences that you're seeing in the use of technology for a manufacturing sector which is largely B2B, like Tata Steel, or for Vibha and HDFC Life, which is more B2C and more sort of consumer-facing?
And I go back to the point I made on business platforms. Business platforms, once you build them, they take you far further from the traditional stakeholder interfaces. I'll give you one specific example from the banking industry. The largest bank in the country, State Bank of India, again the same example, legacy, over 400 million subscribers, customers. Think about as much of legacy can exist in that. They started their digital journey with a very simple aspiration of building a digital front end that engages with their customers. The aim at the back of their head, they want to attract millennials. They want to retain millennials. That was the initial aspiration. As they realized the benefits of that, they started expanding their aspirations. Now they want to have that as the only interface platform for their entire 400 million subscribers. It's expanded from initial customer journeys to all customer journeys that SBI engages with their customers. All they want on that platform, which they call as YONO, you only need one. That's the platform they have. They converted that into a marketplace, a platform to cross-sell, upsell. So that's how the aspirations increased from a basic digital front end to being the only platform they want to engage with the customers. And there are many examples. So I think it's a question of where do you start with a big bang and say, I'm going to change everything? Tough. Organizations from an investment appetite, desire to see quicker ROI, want to see. So customer journeys are the best. B2B platforms, why not? So the question is, you start with a B2B platform that soon will convert into a B2B2C platform as well. So I think that expandability of the business platforms is far more than your traditional interfaces across any industry.
Absolutely, and I think that is going to be critical as we look at the next phase of growth for India as well. TV Narendran, Vibha, and Karan, thank you very much for joining us here and kickstarting the Building Cognitive Enterprise Conclave. Thanks very much for your time.
Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable.